Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
I stood backstage, the weight of the moment settling on me. The prestigious conference in Washington, D.C., the one I dreamed about for years, was finally here. The honor I was about to receive felt unreal, like it should belong to someone else. My colleagues, my peers, were all waiting for me to step out and take the stage. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen. A text from him? Still single at 45, huh? Tragic. My stomach twisted. I had been expecting something, but not this. Not from him. Dr. Alan Carter, neurobiologist, world-renowned for his work, and father of a daughter he never quite seemed to see. His words cut through me like glass. It didn't matter that I was about to receive an award in front of the brightest minds in the world. It didn't matter that I had worked for this moment for so long. His voice echoed in my head, still single at 45. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, but I couldn't. Not now, not here, not with everyone waiting. I slid the phone into my pocket, hoping my hand wasn't shaking. I had to control myself. I had to stand tall, even though every inch of me wanted to collapse. My name was called, sharp and clear. Samantha Carter. I didn't hear much after that. I walked out. The spotlight hit me like a wall. 1,000 faces in the crowd. Applause. But none of it felt real. Not with his words still circling in my head, not with the ache of his absence. The microphone was in my hand, my voice steady as I thanked the committee, thanked my colleagues. I forced the words out, the same rehearsed gratitude everyone expected. But in my mind, all I could hear was his dismissive tone. The applause rang in my ears, but I wasn't truly there. I wasn't present. I was waiting for something I knew would never come. A moment when my father would see me, not just as a reflection of his expectations, but as the woman I had become. The woman who earned this award, the woman he would never acknowledge. As I walked off the stage, I kept my gaze ahead, not daring to look at the screen in my pocket again. The award didn't matter. His words mattered. Still single at 45, huh? I wished I could leave it all behind. I couldn't. The ache settled deeper. I shook off the memory of the award ceremony and let myself be consumed by something else, something much older. The house I grew up in had the same cold precision as my father. No clutter, no mess. Everything in its place. Every moment scheduled. Alan Carter didn't believe in spontaneity, especially not in something as frivolous as affection. His love, if you could even call it that, was always tied to something earned. Respect, achievement, perfection. I was just a kid back then, but I knew what I had to do. I remember the day I got a B on a school project. One of those stupid, irrelevant assignments they made us do in 5th grade. What does the water cycle look like in a drawing? Like it even mattered. But when my father saw it, I might as well have handed him a brick. He sat there in his office, reading through my report like he could feel the failure seeping out of it. His glasses were perched on his nose, a faint frown on his face. B? He'd said, his voice low, tight. What is this? Do you think this is acceptable, Samantha? I swallowed hard, trying to hold it together. It's a B, Dad. It's still good. Good? He snapped the paper in half, letting it drop to the floor. Failure is the enemy of progress. You can't afford this kind of mediocrity. Not in this house. I looked at the floor, trying to find the courage to meet his gaze. I worked hard on it. That's not enough. You must strive for excellence, always. He paced in front of me, his hand tight on the back of the chair. A B means you failed. You'll never get respect unless you get it right, every time. I wanted to tell him that it was just a school project, that no one cared. But I knew better. The rules were clear. Only perfection earned respect. Everything else was irrelevant. I spent the next week redoubling my efforts on every project, every task, just to prove I could get it right. But no matter how hard I tried, the B never seemed to go away in his eyes. Mom tried to soften the blow, though. She always did. Your father's hard on you, she'd say, pulling me into a hug when he wasn't around. But he didn't have it easy growing up either. He had to fight for everything, just like you are. I'd nod and pull away from her, confused. What was the point of him pushing me if I was already trying my best? But she'd tell me stories about his childhood, about how he'd been the one to push through his struggles because no one else would. She said he wasn't being harsh on me out of cruelty. He just didn't know how to show affection any other way. I didn't care much for those stories. They didn't explain why he never seemed to see me. The first time I felt like I might escape his shadow was when I got accepted into that internship program, one of those programs you had to earn the right to even apply for. It was huge for me. I was still in high school, but they wanted me. I felt like I was finally going to get some recognition for my hard work, something that had nothing to do with him. I was excited to tell him. I walked into the living room where he was sitting with a book, but when I told him, there was nothing. No congratulations, no smile, just a nod. Good, he said, barely looking up. Keep it up. Mom, though, she beamed. She clapped her hands together, her face lighting up. Oh, Samantha, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. I wanted to bask in her pride, to let it fill the empty space where his approval should have been. But instead, I felt this gnawing emptiness. She was proud. She always was. But I needed him to be proud too. I needed him to see me. The internship turned into a summer of hard work and long hours, but I pushed myself even harder. For a while, the only time I felt anything close to satisfaction was when I was buried in my research, when the results of my work were clear and precise. At least there, I didn't have to wonder whether I was enough. But the more I excelled, the more I felt like I was just doing it for him. And it never changed. Alan never saw it. I kept moving forward, the research, the deadlines, the papers. My graduation from college came and went, like everything else. My father wasn't there. He said he had a work conflict, and that was the last I heard from him. No congratulations, no acknowledgement. But I didn't expect anything more. I'd stopped expecting anything from him a long time ago. I held my head high that day. I didn't need him. I told myself that over and over as I shook hands with professors, classmates, the chancellor. My mom was there, of course. She always was. Her smile was bigger than mine, like she was proud enough for both of us. You did it, sweetheart, she said as we walked to the car. I knew you would. I didn't reply, but I felt the weight of her words, the quiet pride she had in me. That, at least, was real. A few months later, I made a breakthrough in my research. A small one, but big enough to get attention. The work had the potential to change the way we thought about neural plasticity. It felt like a step forward, something I had earned through sheer determination. And for the first time, I thought maybe, just maybe, this could be the moment. I sent him an invitation. I shouldn't have. I knew that. I knew it wouldn't make any difference. But I did it anyway. The ceremony for the grant was coming up, and I couldn't help it. I drafted the email, simple and direct, trying to keep my expectations low. Dad, I'm presenting the research at the ceremony next month. I'd love it if you could attend. It means a lot to me. I hit send, not sure if I even believed my own words. A week passed. Nothing. I sent a follow-up just in case he missed it. Dad, just checking in. It would really mean a lot to me if you could come. Still, nothing. The silence that followed was suffocating, but I didn't chase it anymore. I stopped trying after that. I stopped hoping for anything. My mom noticed, of course. She always did. Did you hear back from him? She asked one evening, after dinner, when I couldn't hold it in anymore. I shook my head. Number nothing. She took my hand. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I really thought this time, maybe he'd be there. I let out a quiet laugh. It's fine, Mom. It's what he does. He's never there. She didn't say anything for a moment. I could tell she was holding back. I knew she wanted to make it better, but there wasn't anything to say. Maybe he just doesn't understand how much this matters to you, she said softly. I don't think he knows how to. I nodded. I don't think he knows how to care about anything except his work. We sat in the quiet of the kitchen, the clink of utensils the only sound between us. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something inside me was breaking. It wasn't just the silence, it was the weight of it. The knowledge that all my success, all my hard work, would never matter to him. That no matter how far I went, I'd always be looking for approval from someone who would never give it. The worst part? I wasn't sure if he even noticed the distance between us, or if it was something I alone felt. I wanted to ask my mother, but I couldn't. She'd never say it out loud, but I knew she felt the same ache I did. Her love for me was enough to fill the space he left behind, but even she couldn't fix the fracture. So I stopped reaching out. I let the silence settle in, and I let the work speak for itself. The grant was a turning point. It gave me the confidence to leave the silence behind, to step into the future with something solid to stand on. I accepted an offer from one of the top research institutes in Boston. The move wasn't easy. There was always something in the back of my mind telling me to stay, to keep trying to make sense of the distance with my father. But I knew I couldn't keep living in that space, waiting for approval that would never come. In Boston, the work consumed me. The team was sharp, driven. But I was different. I wasn't there to fit in. I didn't need anyone to pat me on the back. I didn't want their validation. I just needed to prove myself. Every experiment, every paper, every late night in the lab was for one reason: to show that I was more than just someone's daughter, more than the woman who couldn't even earn her father's attention. It was Alex who noticed me first. He wasn't one to draw attention to himself, but his work spoke for him. Quiet, meticulous, the kind of person who didn't need to shout to be heard. We started collaborating on a project about neural pathways, a high-profile study that had the potential to make waves in the field. Alex wasn't like the others. He didn't try to outshine me, didn't make me feel like I was in competition with him. That had always been the problem with my past. Everyone around me seemed to want to prove they were better, but Alex wasn't like that. He respected the work for what it was, and for the first time, I realized I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's ego in every collaboration. We'd spend hours talking about the research, bouncing ideas back and forth, but never once did we delve into personal stuff. His life wasn't mine to ask about, and mine wasn't his to question. But there was something about his quiet support that spoke volumes. "You're onto something here," Alex said one afternoon, looking at my data. "We need to push this further." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle in. No one had said that to me in years, not in that way. "I think we're close. We just need the right conditions." Alex looked at me for a long moment, a hint of a smile on his face. "We'll get it. You've got a good eye for this." No one else would have noticed that detail. It wasn't a compliment for the sake of complimenting. It was an acknowledgement of what we were doing together. It wasn't personal, but it felt like the first time anyone had ever seen me, not just as a researcher, but as someone capable. I kept to myself, didn't bring up my past, didn't talk about my father. It wasn't relevant. I was there for the science, and that's all that mattered. But sometimes, in the quiet moments of the lab, when I caught myself lost in a thought, I wondered if Alex knew something about me that I hadn't even fully acknowledged yet, that the work was all I had. At times, I found myself thinking about how little I'd shared with him, about the life I'd left behind in my family. I didn't need to explain it, though, not to him. I wasn't there for that kind of connection. But the way Alex listened, how he respected the space between us, made me realize that maybe, for the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone to fix the silence. I didn't need validation. The only thing I needed was this: the work, the research, the breakthroughs. Everything else had fallen away. The recognition came fast and unexpected. One moment, I was neck-deep in data and endless experiments. The next, my name was being mentioned in the same breath as some of the top neurobiologists in the field. A prestigious honor, a larger award this time, one that was going to put me on the map in a way I hadn't anticipated. The press started to pay attention, calling me a leader in the field, a rising star. It was surreal. It should have been everything I wanted. The night of the gala in New York loomed ahead like a milestone I wasn't sure I was ready for. The invite had come in with fanfare, official, polished, the kind of event that made it clear I'd made it. But as I stood in my office, looking at the invitation again, something inside me twisted. For the first time, I actually considered sending him an invitation. It felt absurd, like the thought was an aftershock from years of doing this alone. But I wondered if maybe this time, this big moment, would be the one that would make him see me. See me, not just the image of what he thought I should be. I sat there for a while, staring at the blank email, my finger hovering over the screen. Should I invite him? Number I knew better? I didn't need to hear from him. I didn't need him to show up. And deep down, I knew I didn't want him there if he wasn't capable of seeing me for who I was. If his love was still tied to some distant expectation, some ideal I could never meet, then it wasn't worth the effort. I deleted the draft, and with it, the hope that maybe this time would be different. When the night of the gala came, I dressed in the kind of gown I never thought I'd wear. Simple but elegant. The kind of thing that made me feel both powerful and out of place. The event was a blur of conversations, handshakes, and the warm glow of recognition. Peers, colleagues, people who actually cared about the work. Not the person behind it, but the work itself. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was just trying to be seen. I was seen. But then my phone buzzed. I stepped out into the hallway, away from the noise, and pulled it from my pocket. A message. It was from him. "Congrats, I guess. Too bad you're still alone." I stared at it for a moment. The words stung, like they always did, but they weren't the dagger they once were. I closed my eyes, took a slow breath, and deleted it. Just like that. The world didn't stop when I did it. The gala was still happening. People still mingling, still congratulating me. No one cared about the phone in my hand. No one cared about his words. And for the first time, I didn't either. I walked back into the room, letting the warmth of the applause wash over me. It wasn't just the award I was accepting, it was the moment I'd come to terms with who he was, and more importantly, who I had become without him. I didn't need his approval, I had my own. The night unfolded, the conversations turned to real discussions about the future of neurobiology, and for once, it felt like the work mattered. Nothing else, just that, and I was okay with that. A few weeks after the gala, when I thought I had finally made peace with everything, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but there was no mistaking the voice on the other end. Samantha, my father's voice came through, cold and businesslike. It's Alan. I've been meaning to call. I gripped the phone tighter, the name Alan landing in my chest like a punch. I see you've been busy, he said, in that flat tone he used when he didn't really care about anything but the facts. I wanted to apologize for missing your award ceremony. I should have been there. I waited for some sort of softness in his voice, maybe even an actual apology, but there was nothing. No warmth, no understanding, just the words, like he was checking off a task. Okay, I said, my voice neutral, but my teeth gritted. It's fine. It's not fine. That's why I'm calling. He paused. Look, I'm opening a new restaurant here in town. I've got a few details to go over, but I thought maybe you'd like to come by for dinner. We can talk about things. I stared at the phone, torn between rolling my eyes and hanging up right there. Talk about things? Like what? The weather? My career? The fact that I'd become a success without him even noticing? Sure, I said, forcing the word out. I'll come. When we met that evening, his restaurant was all polished wood and sharp lines, exactly like everything else in his life. Clean, efficient, but lacking any real character. I sat across from him at a table near the window, the city lights flickering outside. I could hear the low hum of the kitchen behind us, but it didn't drown out the silence between us. He launched into a monologue about the restaurant, how it was going to revolutionize the dining scene, how much money he'd invested. I nodded at all the right moments, trying not to let the resentment crawl up my throat. But there was no mention of my work, nothing to suggest he even remembered the grant or the honor. So, he said after a few minutes, finally looking at me across the table, how's your research going? Are you still working on that project with the neural pathways? I swallowed my frustration. Yes, it's moving forward. We've made some significant progress. Actually, we're about to start a clinical trial based on some of our findings. He nodded, barely registering the words. That's good. But have you thought about the business side of things? You might want to consider branching out, getting involved with more applied work, something that has real-world applications. You can't just hide away in a lab forever. I stared at him, feeling the weight of everything I'd ever done, everything I'd achieved, sinking into my chest. It wasn't about the research or the project to him. It was about how I could use it to fit into a mold he approved of. Dad, I said, my voice tight, this is real-world work. You just don't understand what it is I'm doing. He waved his hand dismissively, like my work was a distraction. I'm just saying, you need to think about the bigger picture. What are you going to do with all this research? You need someone to take care of you. You can't expect to do it all on your own, not forever. I froze. For a second, I couldn't breathe. What? You're alone, Samantha. A career woman like you. He didn't even have the decency to finish the sentence, because I could hear the words already. You need someone to support you. You're not going to get far without someone to take care of the other parts of your life. I clenched my fists under the table, biting my tongue to keep from saying something I'd regret. The anger was there, building. My entire life had been spent proving I could do it alone, that I didn't need anyone, least of all a man. And here he was, telling me what I already knew he thought, that I wasn't whole without someone to take care of me. I exhaled, steadying myself. I don't need anyone to take care of me, I said, my voice colder than I intended. I've managed just fine on my own. The words hung in the air, and I could tell it didn't make any difference to him. He just didn't get it. I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to sit across from this man who would never see me. Not really. Not in the way that mattered. I stood up abruptly, grabbing my coat from the back of the chair. Thanks for dinner, but I'm leaving. I didn't wait for his response. I walked out, leaving the half-eaten meal and the hollow conversation behind me. I wasn't going to do this anymore. I wasn't going to pretend that his attempts to reach out, to fix me, meant anything. I walked out of the restaurant and into the night, knowing I wouldn't be back. I walked back to my office, my mind still reeling from the dinner. My father's words echoed in my head, as if they were trying to carve themselves deeper into me, but I refused to let them. I couldn't keep doing this, living for a piece of him that would never come. I sat at my desk, staring at the empty screen of my computer, and then I opened a new document. The letter started slow, unsure, but the words began to flow as I let myself write out everything I'd been holding in for so long. Dear Dad, I've spent my whole life trying to meet your expectations, trying to be what you wanted me to be. I thought that if I worked hard enough, if I could prove myself enough, you might finally see me for who I am. But you never did. Not really. And I'm tired, Dad. I'm tired of pretending like it matters. I'm tired of trying to earn approval that I will never get. I thought for a long time that if I succeeded, if I made something of myself, it would change things. But nothing's changed. I don't need your validation anymore. I never should have needed it in the first place. I can't keep doing this, chasing after something that isn't there. The silence, the harsh words, it's all shaped me, but it's also made me strong. I don't need your approval. I'm enough as I am, and I'm done trying to prove it. I paused, staring at the screen. The truth was in front of me, raw and final. It wasn't an apology I wanted. It wasn't some grand gesture to fix what was broken. I didn't expect anything from him anymore. I finished the letter. I'm done. I hit send on the email, not expecting a reply. I didn't care if there was one or not. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for so long began to lift. A few days later, Alex and I were working late, analyzing new data for the project we'd been pushing forward. He leaned back in his chair, watching me as I worked. There was something different in the way he looked at me, something that had been there for a while, but I couldn't place it. You know, he said after a while, your work has made a huge impact on the field. I stopped, raising an eyebrow. What do you mean? You've inspired a whole generation of young scientists, he continued, his voice steady, but there was something in it. Respect, admiration. People look up to you, Samantha. Your research, your approach to neurobiology, it's changing the way we think about the brain. I blinked, caught off guard by the sudden wave of emotion that hit me. The acknowledgement wasn't from someone who had to see me. It wasn't coming from a place of duty or expectation. It was real. I had never truly let myself believe that the people around me, people like Alex, might actually see me for who I was, for what I had accomplished. And now that I was hearing it, it felt like a validation I hadn't known I needed. I looked down at the data in front of me, my eyes starting to blur. I didn't think anyone cared about that side of it. Trust me, Alex said. They do. You've built something that matters, Samantha, and the world is starting to notice. I smiled. It was small, but it was enough. The words hung in the air between us, but they weren't just about the work. They were about me. And for the first time, I wasn't seeking anything. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. I didn't need my father to see me, to acknowledge me. I had found my own value. Alex's quiet support, his belief in the work we were doing, felt like the final piece I'd been missing. I didn't need to ask for it. It was just there, like everything else in my life that had taken root and grown without me forcing it. I leaned back in my chair, feeling something inside me shift. I was finally free. Free from the silence, free from the need to be seen by someone who couldn't or wouldn't see me. I was enough, just as I was. I was sitting in my office reviewing the latest research reports when my phone buzzed on the desk. The number was familiar, but the message caught me off guard. I opened it slowly, already knowing who it was from. It was a photo, just a photo. My face, taken during the gala, a moment frozen in time. My expression was neutral, maybe even a little distant, as I had been that night. No words, no congratulatory message, just that image of me standing there, in the spotlight. I stared at the photo for a while, wondering what it meant. There was no message, no explanation, but for the first time, I wondered if he had seen me, really seen me. Had he been watching that night? Had he finally recognized who I had become? The silence that had haunted me for so long felt different now, more like a quiet space between us, instead of the barrier it had been for all these years. The photo wasn't an apology. It wasn't even an attempt to fix anything. But in its own way, it was acknowledgement, the first real acknowledgement from him. I didn't respond to the text. I didn't need to. I didn't need anything from him anymore. A week later, I was at a conference in Boston, standing in the back of the room as a panel discussion wrapped up. I was checking my phone when I felt the weight of someone watching me. I looked up and saw him, standing by the door at the back of the room, his posture stiff as always. Alan Carter, still the same, neat, sharp, detached. He hadn't seen me yet, but I knew he was there. His eyes met mine across the crowded room. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The old reflex kicked in, the one where I'd want to run up to him, ask him why he hadn't been around, tell him how much I needed him to see me. But I didn't. I didn't move. I stayed where I was, still as the rest of the room moved around us. And then, he did something I didn't expect. He nodded. Small, almost imperceptible. But there. A silent recognition. Not an apology, not an offer of anything. Just a nod, as if to say, I see you. It wasn't the grand gesture I had dreamed of as a child. It wasn't a moment of reconciliation, but it was enough. I felt something in me shift. A deep breath I didn't know I had been holding in. It wasn't about needing him to approve of me anymore. It wasn't about proving anything. It was just a silent understanding, a moment of closure. I didn't walk over to him. I didn't feel the need to. The nod was enough. For the first time, I realized that his silence wasn't a reflection of my worth. It had never been. I stood there for a moment longer, my chest lighter than it had been in years. I wasn't the little girl anymore, waiting for his attention. I was a woman who had found her own place in the world, without needing his validation. I turned and walked away. Several months had passed since that moment with my father at the conference, and life had moved forward. My work, my life, my own quiet peace. When I was invited to a research symposium in London, I saw it as another milestone in my career. One more opportunity to share my research, to push the boundaries of what we knew about neurobiology. It was a recognition of the work, and for once, I didn't feel the need to attach anything personal to it. I stood at the podium, the crowd of scientists, researchers, and academics before me, and I felt that familiar rush of confidence I hadn't known for most of my life. I didn't need my father to be proud of me anymore. This was my moment, and I wasn't looking back. In my speech, I talked about resilience, the kind that came from being forced to carve a path on my own. I talked about how the real victories in life aren't the ones that come from external validation, but from the quiet triumphs of knowing your own worth, even when the world doesn't see it. I looked out over the audience, their eyes fixed on me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. I wasn't speaking for anyone else's approval. I wasn't even speaking to prove anything. I was speaking because it was what I had earned. After I finished, I stepped off the stage, my pulse still racing. As I walked toward the back of the room, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting another email about research or a project update, but instead, it was a message from my father. I opened it slowly. It was brief. I see you now. That was it. No explanation, no apology, no acknowledgement of the years of silence, just those 4 words. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to be angry, to rage against the years wasted, the moments I'd spent hoping for something from him. But as I stood there, holding my phone, I realized it didn't matter anymore. I didn't need anything else from him. The words weren't the grand statement I had once dreamed of. They weren't the recognition I had spent so many years chasing. But they were something I didn't need to chase after anymore. I smiled. I was at peace.